Would I really be this cruel to first make a video on how to make sling ammunition rather than a video on how to make a sling? Yes. Today we will be casting lead sling projectiles. But first, let's start with a little bit of history. Slings alongside bows were one of the first ever ranged weapons used by humans. This technology was independently developed by many peoples and cultures from around the whole world. The current archaeological evidence proves that ancient or even prehistoric slingers were present on all continents except for Australia and, well, Antarctica. This doesn't mean that the native Australians did not use slings, it just means that we have not found any evidence yet. You might be wondering what that evidence is. After all, slings traditionally were made of fiber or fabric, which could only survive until today in an extremely dry or very wet and oxygen-free environment. Any other conditions lead to the weapon's decomposition. I know of just several sling finds from Peru and Egypt, but this is not enough to say with confidence that sling was a worldwide use technology. Fortunately, there are two other evidence types for us to rely on. First are artistic representations of slingers on wall painting, reliefs and coins. Fun fact: this wall painting from a Neolithic village in Catalhoyuk, Turkey is dated to be around 10,000 years old, showing how crucial slings were to the early modern humans. The second evidence type for slings' omnipresence in antiquity is the one that interests others the most for today's video, these being the projectiles. On the contrary to a sling, a bullet has to be hard and resistant, thus making it also more likely to survive in time. This can't be more true than in case of a sling. Whereas slings are rather legendary tier super rare artifacts, the projectiles are one of the most common things you can find on an ancient battle dig site. Historical sling bullets, which we will be reconstructing today, are most often found in hoards and are made of stone, clay, or lead. Let's have a look at all three and discuss how they can be obtained or made. I don't think I really need to tell you where to look for stones. However, in case of a sling, it's best for a projectile to be round for better aerodynamics and smooth, so it would cause less damage to a sling, which is made from wool or plant fiber. These being the two most common materials that ancients used to braid their slings out of. With stones as their ammunition, the ancients were described by Roman authors to look for stones that were rounded by long water exposure. Livy talks of Greek slingers who trained slinging with round beach stones, which they would send far out into the open sea. I took the words of Livy to heart. When I was in Sardinia a couple years back, this island gave me all that a modern slinger could dream of. Beaches made out of sling projectiles. It was similar in case of Maciej, also a recent Polish slinging champion. He found the shores of southern Norway to be also a slinger's paradise. Oh, I envy you islanders and coast people. Vegetius, our second ancient source, described Roman soldiers who were raking riverbeds looking for good sling stone projectiles. This is also something you can do if you live far from a sea or an ocean. However, I think a stroll through a field should also yield satisfying results. Clay bullets were the second easiest sling ammunition type to be acquired by the ancients. With clay, there are a few rather grandiose archaeological finds in terms of numbers. For instance, researchers found a hoard of 6,000 clay projectiles in a Roman fort in Lambaesis, Africa. There are also a few notable finds from the time of Roman Britain. Speaking of a Roman army, these guys most often baked their clay bullets to make them even harder. However, there are also a few finds of clay bullets from the East, which were simply sun-dried. This simple process was enough to make them into an effective sling ammunition. What's more, clay allowed for easy hole drilling in a projectile. A holed bullet creates a whistling sound mid-flight, adding a psychological stressor to a slinger's salvo. In our case, we got a little bit of clay from a workshop where we made terracotta molds for lead projectiles, but we will have a better look at them in the next part of this video. With the clay that we got, we've managed to make around 15 bullets, weighing around 120 grams before drying. Some of them we drilled and left all of them in the sun to dry. We decided not to bake our bullets for two reasons. One being the fact that we do not own an oven that reaches temperatures of over 1000 degrees Celsius. This being the temperature required for hardening molecular changes to take place within clay. Second reason is an environmental concern. Baked clay has virtually no chances to be quickly reintegrated into the environment. With that being said, all the ceramics, if not for their historical and cultural value, could be considered trash. Here are our bullets. We made them biconical in shape as this is the format most often used in the past. Size-wise, I hope we'll end up with projectiles that are weighing around 90 grams, as clay loses up to 30% of its weight when drying. Again, we are going for something resembling the most common historical equivalents.
3 days later.
Once the projectiles dried, everything cleared out, and this is what we got. 15 bullets in total. Yeah, I know there are only 11 in the photo, but I couldn't wait and had to test a few of them already. Weight-wise, most of them lost around 25% of their initial mass. Not a single bullet exceeded 100 grams. I consider this to be a success, and can't wait to test those clay bullets on video.
I'd like to close this part with a little bit of historical trivia. Caesar, when describing a siege of one of his forts during the Gallic Wars, describes Gallic slingers who were heating up their projectiles in campfires before throwing, so that they would start fire when landing on thatched roofs of Roman huts. Fire-inducing sling projectiles. That sounds like something I would love to test one day. But for now, let's have a closer look at lead sling ammunition. Historically, in the classical world, lead sling projectiles were first manufactured by the Greeks in the 5th century BCE. Later, they were adopted by the Roman army, but their use gradually declined with time, for reasons that we are not gonna discuss today. However, from the time before they disappeared altogether, we have a bunch of precious archaeological finds. Lead projectiles were the most deadly out of all sling ammunition types. Because of the metal's density, the bullets came out to have a greater flesh-penetrating potential, while being smaller in size than their clay or stone counterparts. Lead's moldability and low melting point of only 327 degrees Celsius allows for easy pellet production. A fire fueled only with wood can reach temperatures of over 500 degrees Celsius, meaning that lead bullets can be manufactured in a simple campfire. This is also something that we're gonna do in a minute. But for casting, we need a form, so I've spent a significant amount of time chiseling out 2 pieces of wood in order to create a mold similar to that found in Olympus, Greece. Making a 1-to-1 replica would require me to put an insane amount of work, as the original allowed for casting of 11 bullets at a time. Moreover, the mold found by the archaeologists was made from terracotta and not wood. So what I copied from the original was just the idea to connect bullet pockets with little veins, allowing for casting of multiple pellets at a time. This is a technique we used once before. It worked fine, but was not error-free. Learning from those mistakes, this time I tried to make a form for smaller projectiles, more accurately resembling the historical examples. Bullets from our previous casting session came out in 2 sizes. Smaller one weighs 114 grams, and the big one sits at 165 grams. So here's the mold I've made, but I'm not fully happy with it. It is because Wood is hard and does not allow for creation of super accurate molds. At least not accurate enough that would allow for a symbol or a message to be inscribed on the little projectile. It is funny, but the ancients, thanks to their creativity, figured out that lead is moldable enough to cast bullets with symbols, letters, or even whole words. Among the archaeological finds, we have sling ammunition with inscribed phrases such as catch, ouch, or Pompey's ass. Wanting to be able to cast similar projectiles during our second casting session, we went to a clay workshop. There we worked on two molds, one for casting a single bullet and the other for casting of 3 bullets at a time. The single cast mold was further enriched with a Roman symbol for good luck. The triple cast mold has a name of Legio Fifth Alaudi inscribed and a Latin word sede, meaning sit down. There is just one issue with the bigger mold. When it was baked, it deformed a little, making the mold leaky. But I believe we can fill in the gaps with fresh clay and still get satisfying results. We'll see. Now let's find us some lead. For lead, all it takes is a quick call to a few of the nearby scrap metal collectors. That's how you end up with something like this. Because I do not trust the purity of these metal scraps, it is best to melt any of it outside and with protective masks on, especially given that lead is toxic just on its own. But since Romans were using it for their water pipes, I don't think they even realized they've been making ammo with extra poison damage. For casting, we are going to need a fire, and not a fresh fire, but a one that has been going for long enough to create embers. Only there we get temperatures high enough to melt lead. We are melting our ore in a simple steel pot, with casts prepared by being tied together and put in a ground for extra stabilization. Since we are dealing with high temperatures and a toxic metal, we are also using protective gloves. Here you can see lead already molten and ready to pour. When pouring, it is important to do it slowly. Thanks to it, all the air in our cast has enough time to escape and not get trapped within the projectile, which would make it less homogeneous. Lead bullets always need some rework after casting, but that's something that has not changed since ancient times. Researchers have noticed that Roman bullets from Corbridge, UK show signs of hammering. It was done most likely to smooth out the edges that form in the middle of a projectile, where the two pieces of the mold are touching.
Later.
Lead projectiles came off looking better than what I hoped for. Unfortunately, the new wooden mold didn't work well. First because I poured lead too fast, and second because we didn't tie it up well enough, so all the lead leaked out. Eventually we decided to use one of the old wood molds, so you could see that this material works fine when it comes to lead casting. On the other hand, clay molds did wonders. I was afraid that a leak in the triple cast mold could potentially sabotage our whole effort. Fortunately, a fresh clay seal worked just fine, and we got to use the mold 4 times. The single cast mold turned out to be even better. With no leakage, bullets produced with it needed the least amount of rework after casting. We ended up with 10 bullets in total, weighing between 43 and 61 grams. Okay, one of the bullets is actually lighter, again as a result of too fast lead pouring. The defects can be noticed when this pellet is compared to a healthy one. Except for this single faux pas, our lead bullets came out great when it comes to historical correctness.
I hope you enjoyed this trip through history and craft as much as we did. For a reenactor, this is something that I like the most. Learning about some equipment from the past and actually doing the reconstructing work myself. The projectiles we made are really beautiful and most likely extremely deadly. Just give us some time and you will get to see their destructive potential in a future video. For now, I would like to discourage you from making lead bullets yourself. This is also one of the reasons why this video was made in the first place, so that you wouldn't have to do similar experimentation yourself. Remember, sling is a dangerous tool. Although I encourage you all to try slinging and see for yourself how much fun it is, please, when training, stick to tennis balls or stones if you can find a place where you can be sure that no passerby could get hurt. That is all for today. So if you're still here, I would like to thank you for watching. For more content like this, just subscribe, give this video a like and a comment. That's the best way to support us for free. However, since recently, you can also become a channel member and financially support our mission to make Rome great again. So, thanks again, and remember, Carthago delenda est, et Roma caput mundi.